You can build and create and design the most beautiful place in the world, but it takes people to make the dream a reality.
MindHack is a podcast about the psychology behind performance, behavior change, and self-optimization. Each episode explores how to think clearly, work smarter, and live intentionally through insightful conversations with leading entrepreneurs, scientists, and experts in human behavior. Hello, and welcome to the MindHack podcast, the show where we explore the science of peak performance, mindset, and personal growth. I'm your host, Cody McLean, and today I'm joined by Taylor Scott, a hospitality pioneer, best-selling author, and leadership expert known for transforming workplaces through generosity and hospitality. In his upcoming book, Give Hospitality, Taylor offers a compelling story demonstrating how a spirit of generosity can inspire genuine connection, transform toxic environments, and elevate both personal and professional relationships. Taylor has spent over 2 decades shaping cultures at industry leaders such as Disney Parks, Gaylord Hotels, and the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas, helping leaders create meaningful, engaged, and compassionate environments. In this conversation, we'll uncover how you can practically integrate generosity and hospitality into your leadership style, driving meaningful results at work, home, and within your community. So without further ado, please welcome Taylor Scott. Taylor, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
So you're very welcome. So Taylor, you spent 2 decades leading teams at some of the biggest names in hospitality. So what was it about those experiences or earlier experiences that kind of hammered in home this idea that leading with hospitality was the key?
Yeah, it started out just as like a fan. Like, I'm from the East Coast. I'm from Kentucky, born and raised in Kentucky. And like most people that grow up in the South or over there on the Eastern Seaboard, it comes time to go on vacation. A lot of us go to Walt Disney World. So we were no different. We would go down to Walt Disney World. Sometimes my parents would put the next vacation on the credit card before they paid off the last one, just because that was just an important time for us. So it started out just me being so curious and really in love with all things Disney and vacation and summertime. And then, we grow and we grow up. And of course, I went to undergrad in Lakeland, Florida on purpose because it was 40 miles due west of the Walt Disney World Resort, because I knew I wanted to work there. Then it was just a series of experiences, series of roles in the show there, if you will, at Walt Disney World as an hourly cast member, then as a salaried leader. And the more I would learn about the business side of things and the leadership side of things, of how Disney approached it, just the more fascinated I became about all things leadership and personal growth. So that led to me just being a student of the game, if you will. And since then, here we are 20 plus years later, and I'm still fascinated with it, still seeking to understand, meeting and, collaborating with people like you and your audience, just because we're all on this journey to become our absolute best. So I guess not one thing, but a series of, experiences along the way that keeps me excited about this type of work.
Was there a particular moment in your journey in which you saw the power of generosity in leadership?
Absolutely. Over and over and over again. I mean, we've all been out here, working, and we've had great leaders. We've had very bad leaders. We've had a lot of leaders probably in between. But I think about just sort of mistakes that I've made, along the way, things where I got it wrong, and leaders that I've had here and there, not all of them, but I can think of a couple that really met that moment with empathy. They met that moment with compassion. They met that moment with a little bit of grace, and they offered grace to me, and they encouraged me by just telling me things like, you know what, we all make mistakes. And then I can think of a couple times right here in Las Vegas. I live in Las Vegas again now, and I was working at the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas, and I messed up. We'll just leave it at that. I made a mistake, and the head of basically HR, we called it the vice president of people. That's when that job title started to be cool, when you called HR people. He told me a story about he had done something similar earlier in his career when he worked down in Miami. So at a time when I was feeling lower than low, and I'm a high performer, I'm used to like getting A's on tests, getting A's in school, being the go-to guy, whether it was playing basketball or out here working, being the go-to guy. I was already feeling bad about myself. But in that moment, that sense of compassion and empathy really just showed me that, you know what, like that's the special stuff. That's the good stuff. Because those types of things, and especially in that moment for me, it made me want to work harder. It made me want to give more to him and to our organization.
Yeah. And so I think there's still a lot of leaders that are stuck in this old mindset that leadership is about strategy, metrics, and kind of giving orders. But I think your core message flips that on its head and saying that you need to make people feel welcome, comfortable, and important. But that sounds kind of simple. Can you kind of go into what you really mean by leading with hospitality in the context of leadership and business?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, actually more than that. 6-7 years ago, I was just curious. I had made my career transition from working in traditional sort of hospitality and entertainment companies, Disney Parks and Resorts, Wynn and Encore, Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas. And I knew I wanted to get into sort of like being an author and a speaker and a consultant and, sort of this thought leadership space. So I got curious and I just dove in and started doing research on my own. I'm like, why do we love certain leaders? Why do we do more for certain leaders, but other ones we just don't? And I wanted to know why. Well, what I learned is that we love our favorite leaders and we are inspired into action with our favorite leaders, with certain leaders, for the same reasons we're inspired into action with our favorite hospitality destinations. Like I mentioned, growing up a Disney kid, going to Walt Disney World, and then as an adult, wanting to work for the Disney company, and then wanting to live in Southern California and work at Disneyland. And so what I found is it's all rooted really in human psychology and science. So I came across Chip and Dan Heath's book, Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard. And they used foundationally in that book, which was, by the way, translated into, I think, 48 different languages, sold 12 million copies. And I'm like, if they could use this research, then why can't I? So they pointed to and they used as a foundation for their message in that book, Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard. They point to Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, Jonathan Haidt. He's an NYU psychologist. And he wrote a book called The Happiness Hypothesis. And in his book, he paints the picture of what's going on inside the human brain at all times. And we do this in our workshops. I share this in my keynotes. And people are like, we're going to talk about science. We're going to talk about human psychology. I'm like, yeah, because if you and I are going to be successful leading humans, then it behooves us to understand how humans behave and what's going on inside the human brain. So here's the deal. Here's what Jonathan Haidt's research shares with us. He's like, how we have the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. The left side of the brain is responsible for the logic, the analysis, things like math, intellect. The right side of the brain is responsible for the emotions and creativity and imagination. So here's Jonathan Haidt's metaphor, if you will, of what's going on inside the human brain. That's all these people on our teams, all these people that we're trying to sell to and market to. Here's what's going on inside their brains. He's like, picture a human person sitting on top of a 6-ton elephant. The human person, we'll call that person the rider. And the rider represents the left side of the brain. The elephant, the 6-ton elephant that the rider is sitting on, that represents the right side of the brain, the emotion. Now, the rider and the elephant both have a role in the show here to get this human to do anything at all. The rider, representing the left side of the brain, is responsible for the direction of where the person's going to go. On the other hand, the elephant, 6-ton elephant, mind you, representing the right side of the brain, the emotions, the feelings. The elephant is responsible for providing the energy and enthusiasm to move, the energy and enthusiasm to change directions, the energy and enthusiasm to even spring into action at all. Now, here's the takeaway for you and me. Here's the takeaway for all of our listeners, all of our people watching. If the elephant and the rider, if the left brain and the right brain ever disagree on which direction to go or whether or not to spring into action, who's going to win the argument?
certainly the elephant in that case.
The elephant every single time. Why? A couple reasons. One, it's a big old elephant for one thing. It's got a 6-ton weight advantage. But the other reason is the elephant. The right brain is responsible for providing the energy, providing the motivation, the enthusiasm to move, change directions, the energy and enthusiasm to be open to accepting feedback, the energy and enthusiasm to implement, to put into action the feedback, the energy and enthusiasm as a guest, as a potential client, as a potential customer, the energy to visit again, the energy to spend more money, the energy to come back again and again and again. So it can all be summed up with another thought leader quote, John Maxwell. He famously said, we point to this in all of our stuff as well, we can't move people into action until we first move them with emotion. So until anybody out there, if you're an up and coming leader, if you've been out here for a few years in a leadership position, maybe you've just been promoted into a higher level leadership role, just remember this. Before anybody gets inspired or motivated to do anything, especially to do anything different, especially to do anything that might be a departure or a change from what is comfortable to them, they first got to feel. And that's why I was just thinking to myself, man, this is a lot like hospitality. When we make people feel, it's amazing what they become inspired to then go do. The same is true negatively as well. If we do things, if our certain behaviors make them feel bad about themselves, make them feel bad about where they are, then we can expect an equal or opposite, reaction to that the other direction.
Right. It's people don't remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel. And it's so much more important.
I've got that
in a
quote on my
context.
refrigerator right over there. Maya Angelou quote.
Yeah. And it's so much more important, especially when you're a leader, because if you're looking down on your team or the people below you, then, they don't want to work for you. And so you have to be and kind of inspire them, but also motivate them. And even when they screw up. And it's also about the little things. And those little things are often kind of not really looked at. And I know in your book, you talk about an experience where you took your family to Walt Disney World, and there was this small gesture that kind of had this huge impression. I'm wondering if you can go into that for me.
Yeah, that probably was the first part of Lead with Hospitality, which came out in April of 2021, right during the pandemic. Yeah, that was me telling a story about my parents taking my sister and me to Walt Disney World. I was 5-6 years old, and I'm 45 years old as we sit here right now. Next month, I'll turn 46. I still remember like it was yesterday. And the story I told in the book is when we had driven to Orlando from Kentucky. So by the time we pulled in the front drive, back then it was called the Buena Vista Palace. I think it now operates as the B Resort. And it's right there on, used to be called the Walt Disney World Village. Now that's called Hotel Plaza Boulevard over by Saratoga Springs, what used to be called Downtown Disney. Now it's Saratoga Springs. But yeah, we pulled into the front drive of this hotel, and the person working, the valet, the bell services, just comes in. It was like a theater moment. Like he opens the car door. "Welcome to Wally World," he said. And we just thought it was hilarious. And he not only made us feel welcome and even added to, if it was even possible, to add to my sister and I, our excitement of being there. He asked us if we're going to go to the parks while we're there. Of course, we said yes. He then walked us into the front desk, waited while we got checked in, and then he walked with us all the way to our room, telling stories about there's where the restaurant is where you can get some dinner. Over here's where we have breakfast. Looked at my sister, and I remember like it was yesterday, pointed out how to get to the pool. In fact, come over here, you can see the pool, just adding to our excitement. And that's the type of thing I'm talking about. And it's like for leaders out here, like imagine what if people that came to work on our team, people that came to work in our organizations, just imagine if they felt that magic, if they felt that about when they came to work. And that's the simple yet profound stuff that I'm just continuing to talk about out here and to share with people, is that you mentioned little things. I had several leaders over the years. One in particular, back at Disneyland. He's a high up guy, and he's a really high up guy now at Disney, Walt Disney Company. as we speak now. He used to tell me all the time. He's like, there's no silver bullets, man. He's like, there's no like magical, like one thing. He's like, it's a series, like hundreds of little things done consistently over time. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about.
So it seems that, do you think that was from the individual employee, or was that experience the result of the leadership structure and what they taught that employee in terms of how to interact with the guests?
It could be a little bit of both. I mean, certainly choosing the right people, selection is half the battle. Do we have the right people on board? And what we share in all of our live learning experiences, leadership, middle management, executive, up and comers. We have sessions that are for sort of this in-between type person that's in between a frontline role and a salary leadership role, but they're on this track. So what we share with them is when it comes around to making your selections, are you making selections based upon your organization's values? Like, so there's vision, there's mission, and there's values. Vision is where we're going as an organization. This is where we're going. Mission is why we exist. But values are the how. Values are how we do what we do. So my guess is that way back then, 1985, 1986, that organization, that hotel had a set of values. And they went out and they hired and they selected for and they praised for and they recognized for, I don't even remember the guy's name, but we'll call him Jim. They probably recognized and made Jim feel great about when they would see that he was doing the things that they needed and wanted and expected from their people. So half of it is selecting the right people whose values align with your organization's values. The other part is creating the right environment. So like we often think as leaders and as coaches that, we got to dazzle them with our, halftime speeches. We got to dazzle them with these great pre-shifts. We got to dazzle them with the data in our meetings. Well, it's less about what we say. And it's really less about what we even do, but it's all about the environment we create. So it's about creating an environment where people actually feel like, I feel welcome here and I feel comfortable in my own skin, that my strengths and my gifts are actually adding value. And in fact, not only are they adding value, they're helping us as an organization get to where we want to go. That makes me feel a sense of pride, the good pride about being a part of this. Now you start to get this sense of belonging. And that is all squarely on the shoulders of any given leader to create that environment.
So the environment that you create, like the workplace, is super important. And I think it's easy for employees, for people to really feel on edge. But you argue that comfort is where real curiosity and relationships happen. So why is creating comfortable environment so critical for fostering curiosity and open conversations and having a strong relationship with your team?
Yeah, it's just because if people don't feel comfortable, if they don't feel safe, like there's different kinds of safe. Like there's, of course, physical safety, but there's also psychological safety. There's also emotional safety. And it kind of goes back to sort of an old school Walt Disney quote that said, he's quoted as saying, you can build and create and design the most beautiful place in the world, but it takes people to make the dream a reality. So if you and I as leaders, you and I as entrepreneurs, you and I as thought leaders, if we want to create something special, if we want to create something where it can grow, and by the way, we can only do so much on our own. So that means we're going to need people. We're going to need whether it's partners or a team or a staff or multiple teams, we need people. So what we want is for people to bring their best selves. Like the whole deal of leadership is like, can we inspire and motivate the right behaviors at the right times to help us achieve agreed upon objectives? So a lot of that comes down to what we can inspire other people to do as opposed to what we're able to do. I'll never forget, I was in a leadership class at Disney University. This is a long time ago. I'll date myself. So 9/11, September 11th, 2001, happened the summer after I got out of undergrad. So I'm on a management internship at Disney's Contemporary Resort, living the dream, 3 months as a housekeeping manager, 3 months as a front desk manager, learning all the things. And you'd go to Disney classes along the way for that program as part of your management internship. And then the idea was, do a great job, crush it. And then when your 6-month temporary program ends, Disney will find somewhere to place you as a full-time salaried leader. And then off you go to start your career. Well, everything was going well until we were so rudely interrupted when those 2 planes flew into the World Trade Center. And so all of Disney's hiring went on pause. Luckily for me, Gaylord Palms Resort and Convention Center was opening across the street down the road, not a Disney hotel, but still in that, Central Florida market. So I went over there and worked there for a few years before going back to Disney to open Disney's Pop Century Resort. But when I came back from my experience working at Gaylord Palms to then coming back to Disney, I'm at Disney University, and it's a full day, a couple day class. Welcoming you back in, sort of baptizing you into the Disney culture, where they talk about the values. They call it Disney traditions. So anyway, they bring in this fancy executive to kick off the day. And he's like, congratulations. Up until now, all of you have been great doers, but now you're leaders. So now we're not going to judge you. All before, you've been graded on the type of work that you have been able to contribute. But now that you're a leader, we're going to grade you. And how good you are is dependent on how well you're able to take a group of people, transform them into a high-performing team of people, and then go lead them to do stuff. So what we need as leaders, especially right now, everything is divided. Political divides, social divides, emotional divides. What we need, if we really want people to stay, if we want the best people to do the best work that they can, it's up to us as leaders to bring it out of them. If they didn't need us, if people would just come and do their best organically and automatically, we wouldn't need things like leaders. Well, that's our role in the show. That's what we got to do. So that's what I'm talking about. It's up to us to build this environment where people bring their best and they're motivated and they're inspired to do more and become more and deliver their absolute best work.
Right. And it goes back to this idea that leadership is not just about somebody who barks orders. A leader is somebody who needs to inspire and create the level of psychological safety and comfort so that everybody who comes can feel like they're able to do their best. Because if they don't respect the leader, if they don't feel that the leader provides them a sense of safety, then you're just going to have a culture, a workplace that is really not conducive to a successful environment. And I know in the past, I think you mentioned in the book, this leader at Microsoft named Satya, who shifted her culture or the Microsoft culture to a learn-it-all culture. So I'm wondering, what is that? Can you explain that? Kind of how does that connect to this idea of creating psychological safety and comfort?
Yeah, it's a story I came across. Satya Nadella, so he spent like the first 22 years of his career being a software engineer at Microsoft. Just like, I'm going to work every day being a software engineer. He just kept slowly but surely moving up, higher level, leading different teams. Okay, leading this team. So and at the time, Microsoft had Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer as their CEOs. Period. The end. That was the history of the CEO post. And what happened was they had this exponential growth, of course, starting in a garage with Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer starting a garage, and then the big time growth explodes. Bill Gates hands over the CEO role to Steve Ballmer, and Steve Ballmer had this in-your-face. There's no secret. I mean, it's out there. He had this in-your-face style of leadership, very abrasive. And as the story goes, what he would tell all the division leaders to do, he's like, rank your people 1 through 5. 1 being good, 5 being bad. And anybody that got like rank 4 or 5 almost had this like sort of like negative connotation, this mark against their name. They were unpromotable. And pretty soon that word started getting out. And it was like a cancer in and among the entire organization of Microsoft, who had become this global sort of powerhouse at this point. People started jumping ship. They started leaving just because they no longer felt safe. They no longer felt comfortable there. Well, then Microsoft started plateauing. It started actually decreasing in terms of all the growth stopped. The heyday of making money, profit, it just stopped. And so they were in they had a big problem. Leadership change. Satya Nadella comes in. He gets the CEO role. First thing he did was have this conversation with all of the company. First thing he did was say, we got to reestablish trust. And Steve Ballmer had this sort of brand of leadership that you had to be, like his expectation was that, yeah, you got to be a know-it-all about your business. Satya Nadella came in and said, that's an unrealistic expectation. I don't want you to feel that way. I want you to change your mindset. I want to be a learn-it-all, like a growth mindset, like understanding that we're not there yet. We haven't achieved the things that we're capable of, but well, we're on our way. And as long as we continue to learn and lean in and be open, those are the types of things that are going to help us get there. So what started to happen is people who had left the company started coming back. And then the culture, they say, started to just shift. And then as the story goes, the reason why I put it in the book, I had writer's block, 6-7 years ago, trying to write the last book, Lead with Hospitality. And it was such a compelling story because shortly thereafter, Microsoft started crushing it again. And they call it literally a renaissance. Microsoft experienced a renaissance where all of a sudden the shift in culture sort of sparked more of this shift in profitability and growth and expansion. But it was all because of how people felt. And so it reminds me too of this other research where I also came across by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. Okay. These were psychologists back in the 80s, and they came up with the self-determination theory based on their research. And here's what they found. And it ties to what I'm talking about when leaders, we have the opportunity to create this environment. It's not about what we say, not necessarily about what we do, but it's all about the environment we create. Here's what the self-determination theory says, is that humans like you, me, and all those people on our teams, you, me, and all those people listening, here's what happens. When we have three psychological needs that are met at the same time, we become self-motivated. We become self-determined. Here's what the three are. Apparently, all of us have a need for autonomy. Like we want some choice in how the work gets accomplished. We all have a need for competence. We all have a need to feel like we are really becoming proficient. We are really learning and we are mastering our work. Choice, competence. And the last thing is we all have a need, whether you want to admit it or not. Whether if you're somebody that's like, I'm not a people person, I'm not a fluff. All human beings were literally created and wired for social connection. So we all have a need for relatedness. So I call it in our book, in this leadership fable that we just put out, came out July 8th. I say this is like the 3 C's of compassionate teams. When leaders can create an environment where people feel these 3 things at the same time. Autonomy, which is a sense of choice. A sense of competence, where they're really getting better. They might have made mistakes before, but ooh, look, you just made an improvement. Ooh, look at the progress. They feel confident, or competence, and they're more confident in themselves because of it. And then finally, a sense of community. We can create this environment where people start to build community with one another. And so now we're leaning in and we're appreciating each other's differences and we're collaborating as a team. So choice, competence, and community. What will happen is people will become self-motivated to stay late, come in early, do extra things, do extra research. Not that we're asking them to kill themselves in terms of work-life balance. It's just about creating the environment where people want to. That's the secret. And so when I sort of started to mesh in like the science and this research with practicality, things that I was out there for 20 plus years experiencing firsthand with some great leaders, some crappy leaders, and a lot of them in between, especially some of these brands that I've worked for, whether it be Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, Gaylord Hotels and Resorts, Wynn and Encore, the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas. So I'm out here saying, look, man, I've got some things that I found that work and some things that don't work. And I've even gone and said, okay, let me go do my own research. And I've started to marry up the reasons why. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and so it seems that is a huge factor, is making everybody feel comfortable and being vulnerable as a leader. And it shows it's just like they've shown studies where if you're a speaker on stage and you actually make a mistake, people identify more with you than the person who does it perfectly from the get-go, because they identify their own weaknesses in you and they're able to relate to you more as a leader. And by having that kind of humbleness, it allows people to connect with you and perhaps even respect you more than they would otherwise. And so everyone wants to feel respect. And I think that's an important aspect of a leader. So I'm curious, how do you create that respect as a leader? How do you earn the respect and the admiration of your employees while still being able to push back? Because sometimes you have to push back as a leader, right? You can't just be this great, nice guy. You kind of want them to see you as a friend, but you're not really friends, right? And so you need to have a boundary. You need to be able to give direction and say hard things when you need to say hard things. So how do you balance that? How do you earn the admiration and respect of your employees, but simultaneously being able to be the leader that is willing to say the hard thing, even if it's not going to get you points?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's the reason we structured Lead with Hospitality the way that we did, the framework. So we have six virtues, if you will, of leading with hospitality, 6 of them. And they go in order. And they go in order on purpose for the reasons you just said. So here's what it is. Number 1, have a commitment to connect, a commitment for connection. So this is connecting with people on a human level before you do anything else. Before you think you can go in there and start giving orders or coaching or giving feedback or giving inspirational halftime speeches or inspirational State of the Union speeches. If you don't have a human connection, it's not going to go very far. Number 2 is strive for self-mastery. This is emotional intelligence. This is the part where a lot of leaders, young and old, emerging leaders and seasoned leaders alike, what I've noticed in 5-6 years out here working with leadership teams, working with different organizations, this is the most prevalent, most common drawback, if you will, to any given organization or leadership culture, and especially to any given human being, is a lack of or a room for improvement in any of the 4 components of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness. You put all 3 of those together and you get relationship management. So my way of saying that is strive for self-mastery. So as we're out here connecting with people on a human level, start to take stock and start to notice things that are giving you enjoyment, things that are getting on your nerves, things that are frustrating you, and then be able to manage those emotions so that you can create harmony and that you're not adding to the disharmony of any given situation. Number 1 is commitment to connect. Number 2 is strive for self-mastery. Number 2 is think about leadership as a service to other people. Before we ask them to serve us, before we ask them to serve our guests, customers, and clients, before we ask them to do anything at all, can we show them we are there to serve them? Not only serve them today in their role, but we're going to serve them in a way that will help them all the way into their life and all the way into their future careers. 1, connect. 2, strive for self-mastery. 3, leadership as a service. That's servant leadership. Number 4 is to engage. Not just to engage for the sake of engaging, but engage purposefully. So things like, that's where the generosity comes in. Giving our time, giving our talent, and giving our heart. So we all have our special gifts. We all have those natural abilities. As a leader, there's no better way to build trust and credibility with your team than when they see us out there giving of ourselves, giving, just flat out giving our special talents away. Connect, strive for self-mastery, serve, engage. Number 5 is coach. Now we're getting somewhere. Now to your point, we've established the foundation. We've hopefully built some credibility. Hopefully, because we've taken the time to engage, we've taken the time to connect on a human level, find out a little bit about them, find out a little bit about what motivates them. What did they not like from their past leader? What would they rather this experience provide them? So that's a level of hopefully respect and credibility, which equals trust. Now, number 5, we've already sort of walked down the steps, if you will. In the South, we call it meet people where they are. We've already met them where they are. So now when it comes time to have a tough conversation, now when it comes time to give them some feedback, because we've done the first 4 things, they will be more inferior. They will be more open to receiving our coaching, to receiving our feedback, because they know it's coming from a place of help, not hurt. Because we connected with them on a human level, we built up some trust. And then number 6 is to inspire. Connect, strive for self-mastery, serve, engage, coach, and inspire. This is that piece about tapping into that, motivating the elephant, piquing the emotion. So letting them know that because you are who you are, because your strengths are such that they are, and the way that you contribute to us, look how your work is impacting our ability to make our vision a reality. So that's what I recommend, because what we know to be true, and I'm sure what you've experienced, what a lot of people listening or watching might have experienced. Maybe you're like me and you've made this mistake firsthand, where you get the leadership role or you get the new job and you're so excited and you want to prove yourself and you roll in there trying to start coaching and inspiring right off the bat before you've successfully connected, worked on yourself a little bit, served people before asking them to do anything for you, and engaged with them in such a way that they're not really used to. I often make the joke, because I'm from Disney, and take the boy out of Disney, can't take Disney out of the boy kind of thing. Like, we should, as leaders, we should have a mindset and a heart set to approach this in a way that people that are on our team, or that people that are in our midst that experience us, stop and they're like Anna from Frozen. They're like, for the first time in forever, I've got a leader that actually took the time to connect with me on a human level. I've got a leader that served me more than they asked me to do anything for them. I've got a leader that gives their time, that gives their talents, that gives their heart. Man, I've never experienced. This is new. And now I'm more compelled to show up in a different way, to show up with my best and to give my best for them and for our collective cause.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that there's probably more leaders in the world that don't lead with humbleness, that kind of let it go to their heads and either offload the responsibility onto the employees, or don't properly coach them, or lead from a place of humbleness. Because often a manager is always looked up to as the person who knows what to do. And sometimes you don't know what to do. And being able to connect with your employees is one of the most important aspects that is often missing from a leader. And so I'm wondering if you have any particular frameworks or recommendations that if, say, somebody's promoted to a leadership position, and it's not even just leadership, right? It could be everyday interactions. But I know myself as a leader, I have a tendency to go into a meeting and then just start saying, okay, what did we do last week? What's going on? What are the KPIs? And the only thing that I've tried to incorporate is an acronym. I'm forgetting the name now, but it was that you spend the first 5 minutes of the meeting actually just talking about something good that happened to you in the past week. And that was like the little bit of insert in terms of trying to being able to connect with people. But how should a manager interact with an employee? Say you're having a one-on-one conversation. How much of that conversation should be spent getting to know that person, or saying, how was your weekend? It's like, how do you connect? How do you balance that and connect with the employee before you go then to the part that is the actual job as a leader and giving them the direction that they need? How do you make that connection?
Be interested more than you try to come across interesting. Approach every interaction, every conversation en route to a relationship instead of a transaction. Because it's real easy when we get out here and the whirlwind's going and it's, all right, we got at 8 o'clock, we got 10:30, I got this thing, I got to squeeze in the team meeting. Really easy to get swept into transaction mode. Let me check it off the list. Yeah, we had the meeting, right? Did you not get the email? I sent it. But what about the 3 C's? Did you build an environment where people felt those 3 things? They felt some choice on how the work gets done because of the way you not only set the clear expectation and got out of their way, and or gave them now the resources that they need to do it, to handle it with the choice, the autonomy. Did they feel competent? Did you recognize them? Did you take that 5-10 minutes at the start of a meeting or before you leave the meeting or sometime in the middle of the meeting? Say, you know what? We're going to have some recognition moment right here. I'd like to recognize and then just do it. I want to recognize Sheila. I want to recognize Bob. I want to recognize Robert, whoever, for this specific thing. Now they feel competent. And then did you spend some time letting them engage with each other? I forgot who it was from, but I picked this up along the way here. This is more recent. This is after I'd made my switch and started getting out here as an entrepreneur. I read somewhere where this particular leader on purpose would always show up 10 minutes late to the team meeting on purpose because they wanted the team just talk to each other. Just being there, hanging out in the same space, connecting, building a sense of community. The 3 C's: choice, competence, and community. That's one framework. Another one, I'll go back to Chip and Dan Heath. Everything they write turns to gold. Recommend everyone. I got my own books now. I'm still selling these guys' books, you know.
Love them.
Yeah, they're great because they sort of marry up the logic and the emotion with everything they do. They have research-based stuff, but they have a way of putting in very practical, actionable things to bring them to life. Well, in another book, they have The Power of Moments. Why some moments are more extraordinary than others. 4 reasons. Ready? Well, maybe we could put it in the show notes or you could point people there. It spells epic. So like some moments just land with us. Some moments impact us differently and stick with us and are more extraordinary than others when these 4 things happen. When people feel an elevated sense of joy. That's the E, elevated joy. The P is pride, the good pride. When they feel proud that they belong on this team. They feel proud to be a part of it, something bigger than themselves. The I is insight, a moment of insight. When they learn something, they pick up something that they don't soon forget. And the C, once again, is connection, is human connection. So as leaders, to your point, how do we communicate? How do we connect with our people in such a way that is different, that they feel Anna from Frozen for the first time in forever? I work somewhere where I feel like this is magic because the leader created an environment that elevated my joy, made me feel proud to be there. I learn stuff all the time, moments of insight I don't soon forget. And I have a human connection, almost an emotional connection to the people there. I have an emotional connection to the mission. I have emotional connection to what this brand stands for. That's a couple different frameworks, whether it's the 3 C's of compassionate teams or it's the Chip and Dan Heath, why some moments are more extraordinary than others.
You remind me about really the only thing that I remember from reading that book, The Power of Moments, is this example they give of this hotel in Los Angeles that it looks like a normal motel, like nothing special about it. But in the pool area, they have this big red button and you can press that button and then somebody will come out with a tray of popsicles that you can choose from. And there's just something that's so different about that, like the expectation that you might have. If you go to a hotel that's a 5-star hotel, or, you know, in my case, I've been to a lot of different Michelin restaurants, right? And you have this expectation in your head of what you're going to receive. And you are criticizing and analyzing everything that happens based on this expectation you have in your head because you have such a high expectation for a 5-star hotel or a Michelin star restaurant. And in fact, the experiences that I remember the most are when I go to this tiny hole in the wall restaurant and I have the most amazing food. And it's like the most incredible experience because it's the opposite of what I expected. And I think the hotel, like that's so simple. It's so easy to have something like that, but it's so different than what you would expect. And another case I remember, I think there's a hotel that in the elevator, they have buttons you can press and you can choose the music that you want to listen to in the elevator. And it's those little tiny things that often are shifting, that shift us, that create that experience that are so cheap to do. And honestly, I wonder why more hospitality places don't do these types of things because that's what kind of creates a memory. You don't remember your experience at a hotel, but if a hotel has this music button in the elevator, you're going to remember that. So I think there's much more that we can do as a leader, as an organization, to help creating those experiences. But yeah, I just love that story of that motel.
Exactly. 100%. Exactly right. If we don't feel it, we won't do it. Whether we're a member of a team or whether we're a customer. If we don't feel it, we're not going to go back. If we don't feel it, we're not going to tell stories about it like you just did. If we don't feel it, we're not going to pay the premium. So we all have a choice whether or not we want to create experiences that people feel.
Another thing that I was thinking about is just to get your expertise. And so I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of leaders are familiar with this concept of the shit sandwich, right? You're in a one-on-one meeting. You have to give somebody some negative feedback about their job performance. And you often start off with a positive comment. Then you put it in the middle, right? And then you end the conversation on a positive comment. Is that the kind of recommendation you would have for a leader in terms of how do they deliver bad news to an employee? Is that the method that you would recommend?
No, that's over. It's been over for 15 years. And the reason is especially if you've got a high performer, not even so much. Think about the last thing that they're going to hear. If it's the sandwich, the last thing they're going to hear is something good again. When what we want them to remember and what we want them to internalize is the misstep that they made. Is the mistake that they made or what we expect them to do differently or even better. So, that's outdated information. If anybody tells you to do that, that means that they're working off the 1998 playbook. It's over. Now, what we share and what, I don't know what you think, but here's the approach that we've been out here sharing for the last several years, which is just shift feedback. Like, it doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be like bad. It doesn't have to be like this thing that we're dreading not only to doing, but we're dreading to receiving. And the one antidote to that is to have a culture where you have conversations regularly, where you are not just hearing from your leader when you've done something wrong. I had a leader back in the day at a hotel that will go unnamed, that I only saw this particular leader when he was coming to like basically jump down my throat and give me feedback that we were not cutting it in some way, shape, or form. So I couldn't stand the guy because the only time that I got to interact with him was when he was telling me how bad I was doing. And I left. So what we like to do is shift it from a monologue to a dialogue. In a situation where, in a conversation where a leader can just have a conversation and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about something that I noticed. Here was the situation. Here's the behavior that I noticed. And then ask him a couple questions. One is, when we have that kind of behavior, when we approach XYZ situation in that respect, what is the impact of that? How do you think that impacts our ability to fill in the blank? Our ability to become the greatest in our industry, our ability to improve the guest experience, and just stop and pause, stop talking, and let them think about it and give you an answer. The next question is, if you had it to do all over again tomorrow, or if you're presented with the same thing, what would you do differently? Pause. Stop talking, let them think about it, and then they'll come up with it. It's amazing what'll happen when we just trust people before we know we can't. When we ask them what they think. Again, another Anna from Frozen moment, potentially. You want me to decide? You're asking me? Yeah, I believe in you. That's why I picked you. That's why I put you in this situation. So now they're walking away from the conversation going, could have been worse. And better yet, Taylor now, he asked me what I thought. I had the right answer, so shoot, I should have been more confident in the first place. So they walk away now going, okay, that was a really important thing to my leader. That was a really important thing that I got to make sure I hit next time. And the most important part is the burden of learning and the responsibility shifts from the leader to them, where the leader asks them those couple questions and they come up with the answer on their own. That's what I would recommend as opposed to the sandwich, because the sandwich is kind of BS.
True. And I think that the aspect of asking the employee what they should do differently, putting it on them to think about how should they improve that interaction if it comes up again, that kind of gives them that sense of ownership, right?
Sure.
Where you're not telling them what to do. They're coming up with the answers, what they should do differently. And I think that's a much better approach to otherwise just giving them a straight order. And so going from leadership to, I know your second book called Give Hospitality, it kind of expands on this idea of generosity as a core principle. So I'm wondering if for anybody listening that might say, that's interesting, but what would I actually do to give hospitality? Like how does hospitality apply to in an industry where you have remote employees? Or it's not like a hospitality-based business. Are there any kind of tools or mindsets that from that book that could help people make a positive change?
Yeah, the thing is, whether you're in hospitality or not, you either have people that you're working with, or you're relying on people to do certain functions so that your organization or your business can move the needle or move the proverbial ball down the field. So the thing about all of these principles is they're transferable from one industry to the next. They're transferable across contexts. They're transferable across cultures. They're transferable across time. And they're transferable whether it's a remote situation or in-person situation. We proved to ourselves during the pandemic that we can all be physically distanced, but we still have emotions. We can be physically distanced, but still stay emotionally connected. In fact, we have to look at all these organizations that managed to keep the lights on, managed to keep their companies afloat while people were spread out, and some still are spread out all across the country or even world. Well, it's because some leaders decided that they needed to keep this emotional connection in place. So if you're somebody that has a team, or if you're somebody that works in an industry where you're either a part of a team of humans or you lead a team of humans, the thing is, we're all different. You may work in a different industry than I do. We got white people, black people, Latino people, Asian people, Asian American people, Indian people, indigenous people, gay people, straight people, transgender people, baby boomer people, Gen X people, millennial people, Gen Z people. One thing we all have in common is we're all people. So if you're somebody that either works with or relies on humans, then I recommend both frameworks. I recommend connect, strive for self-mastery, serve, engage, coach, and then inspire. And then the book we just put out is a leadership fable this time. So we got a lot of feedback. Taylor, love the other book. Great how-tos. You had great stories from real life things. And then people give me feedback like, why don't you try a story? Because there's a lot of people that rather reading these things in the form of a story. So that's what we did. I created all these characters in my heart and in my mind, some based on real people. And I created the character Summer Grace, and she leaves a toxic job with a toxic boss, and she goes to work for a more magical place called Kauwela Resorts. Kauwela means summertime in Hawaiian. So what I've done is this story is about her first 2 weeks on the job. When she goes to work at Kauwela Resorts, and Kauwela Resorts has gotten a lot of fame and a lot of notoriety for having a very positive, productive, and inclusive workplace culture. Remember, this is a hopeful story of what happens when we live, work, and love from a place of generosity. So all we did was we painted the picture of the conversations that the orientation experience for Summer Grace and 20 of her new coworkers that have all joined Kauwela Resorts together. And I paint the picture of what they do is they have a series of conversations that they call hospitality conversations about the things that matter. The things that matter are the Kauwela Resorts values. Give compassion, give encouragement, give kindness, give hospitality, and give leadership. And what I've done is I've created a G word, an I word, a V word, and an E word that I believe will help anybody in any organization, in any industry, on any level. Will help the G word, I word, V word, and E word that I've assigned and aligned to each of these core values: compassion, encouragement, kindness, hospitality, and leadership. And so I'll leave people to go check out the book, and you can find that there's an action plan. You can go to leadwithhospitality.com. You can actually download it free of charge, complimentary, where it's got the action plan. It's meant to give this sense of introspection, both for you and me as individuals, but also for you and I as leaders to share this resource with our teams. I'm sharing it with a lot of my clients. I'm sharing it with organizations and leaders that aren't even my clients yet. I've been sitting right here at my kitchen table. I've been traveling, and I've been sending leaders all around the country, all 4 of the most popular Hawaiian islands: Oahu, Maui, the island of Hawaii, and Kauai. People just waking up to these emails from me. I'm just sending them this action plan. I encourage everybody to just take a look at it and think to yourself, imagine, what if I had conversations like this with my team? What if I had conversations like this with people that are my peers? How much more would I get to know them? How much more would people get to know me? How much more connected would we be to each other? And how much more connected would all of us be to the overarching purpose and mission of the organization? So there's a little bit of why I did it and how we framed it and what we hope will inspire people to do. Because this all started, I started writing this during the pandemic. We no sooner put out Lead with Hospitality that George Floyd happened and the height of the pandemic and all of the division, and it's been divided ever since. And in many ways, it's worse now than it was even then. And it's pretty bad then. So the heartbreak, and I'm sitting here, going through things on my own, and I'm hearing from my friends, my family, and former colleagues that I've worked with and for in these other organizations that we've mentioned, a lot of heartbreak out there. And it usually comes down to people being divided. And I just have a feeling that the one thing that I know will bridge divides is a sense of and a spirit of generosity. And so we did it this way, and on purpose. It aligns with the spirit of aloha. And so that's why we made it a Hawaiian theme. And what we're doing is we're donating a portion of the proceeds from this book and from any keynotes and leadership development programs that we get as a result for putting out this book and the buzz. We're donating a portion of the proceeds to the Hawaii Community Foundation's Maui Strong Fund to help support the recovery efforts for the people that were impacted by the wildfires in 2023 in Lahaina Harbor on Maui.
So Taylor, if there's kind of one core message that you want every listener to take away from our conversation about leading and giving hospitality, what would that be?
Be human, emotionally connect, and serve people selflessly. Great leaders are not great because of their leadershipness. Great leaders are great because of their humanness. So that's why we keep writing all the things. That's why we keep putting out the resources, is just to bring everybody back as often as we can to staying grounded in your own humanness.
And where can listeners connect with your work, find your books, and learn more about your workshops and coaching?
Leadwithhospitality.com. Visit us at leadwithhospitality.com. It's all on there. Make yourself at home. Click around. My email address is taylor@leadwithhospitality.com. My cell phone number, 321-297-6323. @tscott1502 on Instagram. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn, Taylor Scott, Lead with Hospitality LLC. Look forward to connecting with you.
Yep. All right. And I think that wraps up today's conversation. So huge thanks to Taylor Scott for joining us and sharing really some of your remarkable insights that you've had in your leadership positions and seeing the leadership and really how it should be working. So thank you again. And as always, thank you for tuning into the MindHack podcast. I'm Cody McLean. Stay curious, keep exploring, and I'll catch you in the next episode.